Welcome. This is the prediction and preview show for Fight Night 112. Michael Chiesa versus Kevin Lee take place in Oklahoma on the 25th of June. This is in the middle of a really strong run for the UFC, with a show every week for a couple of months. So I'm going to try a few things out today, a few different things. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you like this. If something's not to your liking, also let me know. Please like, subscribe, share, all that nonsense. So first we'll just go through a rundown of the card. Obviously main event, like I said, Michael Chiesa versus Kevin Lee. Co-main event is likely to be Johnny Big Riggs Hendricks against Tim Boetsch. Then we have Penn and Dennis Siver. Felice Herrig against Justin Kish. Guida, Koch. Josh Stansbury, Jeremy Kimball. Carla Esparza, Moroz. Victor Miranda and Marvin Vettori. Johnny Case takes on Tony Martin. Devin Powell takes on Daryl Horcher. And the first fight that we're going to discuss today, Tim Dirty Birds Mean taking on Alex Garcia. So both are very competent fighters. Both have got a lot of experience inside the UFC. The common opponent they have is Neil Magny. Beat them both by decision. And what I've done is I've broken down the best ways I think that they can win this. So Tim Means has 18 wins via KO and TKO. Obviously he's a striker to be respected. He's been in there with a lot of good fighters. He has lost 8, but most of his losses are to real top level competitors. And when we look at Alex Garcia, the resume isn't as impressive as Tim Means. Now, like I said, both guys are good everywhere, and Garcia's best option in this fight is probably to win via submission. And Tim Means can be submitted. He has lost via submission before, but Alex Garcia has a hittable chin. I'm going for Tim Means to win via TKO, but if this is the one that kicks off the card, if this is the opening bout, it's a great one to start with. Next up, we're going to discuss Devin Powell versus Daryl Horcher. Horcher probably most famous for coming in late notice against against Khabib and doing a good job. Now, what can we really say about this? I'm not massively convinced that Powell is really UFC level. I think, potentially he could get there. He could beat some people in the UFC. I'm not saying he couldn't, but I certainly don't see him being a top 10, top 15 fighter. Horcher, I think he's UFC level. Does he have what it takes to beat Powell? I think so. I think it's likely to be a decision. But, if it goes to the ground, I do think Devin Powell has the advantage in terms of jiu-jitsu. Horcher seems to be the better wrestler. And a lot of the time, jiu-jitsu versus wrestler, many people favor the jiu-jitsu artist. We'll talk about that again later on with the Penn Dennis Siver fight. I also think Horcher has better power standing up, but I don't think it's going to be enough to knock out Powell. But yeah, like I said, I'm going with Horcher by decision. The next fight we're going to discuss is Johnny Case against Tony Martin. It's quite an interesting fight. I think this could be on the list for fight of the night contenders. And the excuse me. It's going to be a good fight. I think Case is likely to win this one via submission, and the reason I think that he's going to win this via submission is I think he's probably going to win the stand-up battle, and I think Martin's going to try and take it to the ground, and I think Case will finish him. Now, Johnny Case has tried to rush the finish early in his career, but I think at this stage he's mature enough and calm enough to pace himself, to understand what's happening in the octagon, and the best way to win is to wait for your opening. Now, Martin has lost twice to chokes, and I think he's probably going to open himself up to a submission again. So Johnny Case to win this one via submission. The next fight, we have Vitor Miranda rather, against Marvin Vettori. This is a really good fight, and some people will tell you that this is the striker against the ground specialist, and to a certain extent it is, because Miranda has 9 of his 12 wins by TKO, and Marvin Vettori really is a ground specialist. He gets a lot of wins via submission. But I think actually Vitor Miranda isn't that bad on the ground. I think he's got a big advantage standing. And I think that Vettori, the stand-up that I've seen from him, isn't great. At 23 though, Vettori can certainly improve leaps and bounds between fights. And I think the weakness for Miranda is he's 38 years old. We've probably seen the best of him. And while he's still got thunder in the hands, I'm going to go with Vettori to win this one via submission. You know, this could also, let's say, end in decision, but I think Vettori can do enough in the later rounds to get that submission. Both guys actually lost to Antonio Carlos Jr. And I think, you know, the real key to victory, and it's very simple, yeah, the key to victory in every fight is who can impose their will. But if Vitor Miranda can keep this standing, he could, you know, get the victory. If Vettori can take it to the ground, in my opinion, it's his fight to lose. Another kind of ground battle that we're going to see is Carla Esparza against Marianne Moroz. Esparza 11-4, the Cookie Monster, the first champion in the division, taking on Moroz, who's 8-1. Now, we talked about the BJJ, you know, the jiu-jitsu against the wrestling. And I think Esparza is going to try and out-wrestle her. She does have very good wrestling, good control, but Moroz wins a lot of her fights off her back. She has very good stand-up. I think Moroz has the advantage in the stand-up, but she likes to work off her back. I think Esparza is going to get on top of her. She's going to open herself up and let Esparza do that. So obviously that's always a risk, but my prediction is that Moroz goes to the ground, you know, invites her into the guard and submits her, likely with a triangle or armbar. Okay, next up we've got Josh Stansbury against Jeremy Kimball. What can we really say about these two guys? Another two guys that I'm not convinced belong in the UFC. Now, to be fair to Kimball, 10 TKO victories mean he's got the thunder in the hands and always the chance to win. But like we can see, Kimball has lost 4 times to rear naked chokes. Stansbury has won, you know, 4 of his 5 submissions via choke. If Stansbury can get this to the ground, I think he will. You know, my prediction is that he wins this via submission. But Kimball's got powerful hands. He could win this standing up. Both of these guys need to show me that they're capable of being in the UFC, and you know, I'm not sure beating the other one proves that. Now, talking about 2 UFC veterans, 2 guys who definitely deserve to be there, Guida and Herrig Koch. Now, this will be Guida's 50th pro fight. You know, I mean, that kind of record in the modern era, it's insane. Now, everybody knows about the Carpenter, his great pressure against the fence, and he can, you know, certainly get caught up in the moment. If he'll listen to the guys at Jackson Wink in the corner and, you know, try and be a little bit more technical, I think he's got a better chance. If he tries to go back to his wrestling, he's got a good chance as well. However, this is 2 guys that are skilled everywhere. You know, Koch, to say he's only 28, you know, he's got a lot of fights under his belt as well. And both of these guys are really good in all areas of the game. I do think Koch is a more technical striker standing up. You know, can he handle the pace and the pressure of Guida? It's a big question, but I think Koch wins this one via TKO. Now, the next fight is Felice Herrig against Justin Kish. And the last time out, Felice Herrig was put in a similar position, you know. Let's say she's a veteran of the female side of MMA, and they were putting her up against Alexis Grasso, who they hope will be a big star. And I think Kish is the next one they're gonna try and earn a win off her reputation. Now, do I think Kish is a much better striker? Technically, yeah. She's a Muay Thai champion. She fought a lot in kickboxing, Muay Thai, and I certainly think she's got the crisper, better strikes. I think Herrig is better at getting close, putting pressure on her. I think she's definitely got better wrestling and things like that. So if Herrig wants to get close to her, take her down, I think it's a better fight for Herrig. But Herrig does like to exchange. So I think this is going to take place on the feet. And in that sense, you can only pick one winner. Kish is a much better striker. I don't think it's going to go, anyone's going to get knocked out. I think it's going to go to decision. You really shouldn't count out Herrig because of her experience, but I think Kish moves to 7-0. Now, the next fight is, I don't know that we call Dennis Siver a legend, but he's certainly a veteran. And at 22-11, you know, he's had a mixed kind of career, but he's a very accomplished MMA fighter. You know, the old BJ Penn, the best BJ Penn that we know, would have destroyed Dennis Siver. The BJ Penn that fought Yair Rodriguez, I don't know anybody that he could beat, you know, in that kind of sense. I don't think Siver knocks him out. You know, I don't think he's got that kind of power in the hands, but maybe he's got enough kind of pressure and ability on the feet to put Penn against the cage and get a TKO stoppage. Penn certainly looked very apprehensive in the last fight. He didn't want to throw anything, but most likely what happens is Siver tries to take him down. Now, the one thing about BJ Penn is, I don't know if he's the fastest person in the world to get to black belt, but he's one of the fastest. It's how he got the name The Prodigy. And if Siver wants to take him down and wrestle him, that may be BJ Penn's best route to victory. So if I was Dennis Siver's coach, even though your wrestling is your strongest suit, don't do it. You know, don't try and, I mean, defensive wrestle, keep BJ standing, but keep him standing, keep him striking, because if he doesn't pull the trigger, then Siver wins this fight. If it goes to the ground, there are so many ways that BJ could finish this fight on the ground. Now, I think that Siver's going to win this. I think the BJ Penn that we saw in the last fight was who he is now. He's a shell of the legend, and I hope that if he loses, the UFC does the right thing and retires him for good. You know, keep a fight on that contract, but don't offer him anything. Just keep him sat there. I don't know what you do with BJ, because BJ is the kind of guy who doesn't want to retire ever. You know, and then we move on from one great fight with two veterans to another. Johnny Hendricks versus Tim Boetsch. Big Rigg is 18-6. Boetsch is 20-11. Both are great college wrestlers. Both can land big punches. So I wouldn't necessarily say that they're very similar kind of fighters, but if you look at it on a basic setup, they really are. Now, what do we think about Tim Boetsch? Is he top 10, top 15, middleweight? Is he moving towards the title? Is Johnny Hendricks, you know, in that kind of scenario? I think on the night Boetsch will look bigger, more physically imposing. So even though Boetsch isn't as good a wrestler as Johnny Hendricks, I would be surprised if Hendricks is able to wrestle him in the way that he does other people. In terms of power punching, I would give the nod again to Tim Boetsch. You know, there's question marks about Big Rigg's weight cuts, what that took out of him. Having said that, Hendricks can also KO Boetsch, but I just think that if Hendricks is able to get this out of the first round into the later rounds, he is more and more likely to win this fight. I think it's going to be a really interesting match, and I think it's going to tell us a lot about how far Hendricks can go in the division. His win over Hector Lombard, I don't want to say it surprised me, but it gave me more hope for him in the division than I expected he would have. But it's a very interesting fight. I'm glad to see it as the co-main event, and it takes a little bit of pressure off Hendricks, but we'll see. I expect Hendricks to win this by decision. And then that takes us to the main event. Now, the main event of this card is Kevin Lee versus Michael Chiesa. If you saw the summer press conference, then everybody was talking about, the punch or whatever, but Chiesa basically runned Kevin Lee for mentioning his mother, and you've got some idiot with a mullet running over and getting punched in the face over a stupid childish argument. And I'll be honest, when I think about Mike Chiesa, I don't think a guy who's 14-2. For whatever reason, I think his record is much worse than that. And when I think of Kevin Lee, I think he's much more inexperienced. And in fact, Kevin Lee's 15-2, so he's got more fights under his belt than Chiesa. My understanding of both of these guys from a very casual point was wrong. But what we are going to see in the main event is a battle of the submission artists. They both lost to Alia Quinta. They both beat Francisco Trinaldo. Now, while I think Chiesa has a much stronger resume, I think the momentum, let's say, is with Kevin Lee. And the big question that I have, or let's say the big takeaway, is both lost to Alia Quinta. And what Alia Quinta does very, very well is he gets close, he ruffles guys up, he puts a lot of pressure on them, and does a lot with his striking. Now, I could see this fight going either way. I could see both guys winning this via submission because of their excellent submission pedigrees. But I think Mike Chiesa does have the experience. He is somewhat easy to underrate, and I think Kevin Lee is underrating him. I think Kevin Lee is looking past him. At the moment, this is all about Kevin Lee and his big moment, and I think Chiesa is going to spoil that party. And then you've really got to give him somebody inside the top 5 with an impressive resume like that, a win in the main event of this kind of card. You need to give him some guy in the top 5. So I think it's going to be a good card. It's going to be interesting when in Oklahoma. I don't know how much press coverage it's going to get because it's stuck in the middle of a huge run of cards. But let's hope it goes off as well as expected. And, there's more knockouts than I predict in this